We would do like a full body primer isometric contraction series.
Explain that to people out there, what that would look like, what that means.
So when we put them on the table, like we started with the lower half of the kinetic chain, right? We're doing, leg abduction, iso hold. So like when you're priming, you're holding a sustained contraction for 6 to 10 seconds on, 6 to 10 seconds off. And when you first start off with guys as isos, you only do it at 10% of the rate of the force. So like subjectively, how the athlete interprets 10%, they're holding that contracted state. So what it's doing is that it's connecting what is known as efferent mechanical receptors, where the brain is sending these electrical signals to start telling these muscles to turn on, to contract, to create high force production, to then better stabilize the body. Because before the body moves dynamically, it's got to stabilize itself isometrically. When I define pitching mechanics is an expression based on how much stress an athlete has adapted over the years of throwing. Because throwing is a very aggressive movement, and because it's passive, when you're going into scap retraction, right? That's a distraction force on the anterior part of the shoulder, bicep tendon, right? So that's why when people say, oh, like early trunk rotation and you're dragging, right? That creates a distraction force where that deep labrum, right, is. And then when you're hitting layback, you're going further, like obviously this is my active, but you're going further back. So that's passive. So neurologically, your muscles aren't doing the job that it's supposed to contract, to stabilize it. So the stress goes to passive connective tissue, the deep material continuum, right? Tendon, like the tissue, tendon, ligament, and the bone cartilage. And that's why you see growth plate injuries happening at younger kids. So if we know that that's the type of stress that we exhibit, this is where kind of the isometrics come into play. Because when we undergo stress, muscles will tend to shut off due to stress. They won't create as much high force production and stability in that joint, because muscles stabilize joints. So if we know that based on the mechanics and the way that we throw a baseball, there's certain muscles that are going to be involved. They're going to be more shut off due to that stress. And so what ends up happening is that when you're looking at all the length tension relationship between the muscles around the joint, certain muscles are going to want to tighten up to further stabilize this joint because of some of the other muscles not doing its job. So that's known as reciprocal inhibition. So, but the problem that I see in the industry is that what's the first diagnosis that we do with something that's tight? Oh, we got to dig, we got to smash, we got to stretch. And what that's going to do is start causing muscle inhibition. That's going to decrease force output. So the tightness is a neurological adaptation that the brain is saying, hey, we need to tighten this muscle up to basically have higher force production rate to better stabilize this joint. And so the isometrics, if we know what we need to target, it kind of helps rebalance the length tension relationship of the muscles around that joint. And that's a lot that I'm learning as a muscle system specialist practitioner. I definitely want to give my credit to Greg Mack on just the things that I'm learning, but like that right there is a huge component, with sustaining health, especially at a young age that's throwing that hard. And obviously there's other components too, making sure you're staying up on the mobility, the weight room, the nutrition, the sleep, things like that.